Recording.
All right, so today, ladies and gentlemen, we will be talking about and examining the process of making inferences. Now, for a lot of you, like I said before, this should be more review than anything. You've been talking about inferences probably going all the way back to second, third grade at a minimum, okay? But for what we're going to be doing next week, all right, as we get into our new unit of finding connections across genres, I just want to make sure that we understand what inferences are and how to make them, okay? So this should only take about 10 minutes. It's going to be primarily lecture based, but if you have any questions, raise your hand and ask, okay? So, it's not working. It's not working. Oh, there we go. My apologies. I pressed the wrong button. So, first question, what are inferences, okay? Inferences are often referred to as what you read between the lines, okay? So we'll just get through it right there, all right? Inferences are implications or suggestions by the author, all right? They are the things that are said implicitly as opposed to explicitly, indirectly as opposed to directly, okay? Inferences are those things that you have to come up with based on what the author gives you, and as we'll see here, some other factors, okay? It's a conclusion that you come to rather than just being told straight up. Now, the thing about that is as you guys move up from one level to the next, so when you get to English 2, English 3, English 4, and for those of you that are planning to go to college, you will be doing mostly inferencing. There will be very few things that you read that are very direct in terms of what the author is trying to say, whether that's theme or other aspects of literature. Any questions on what an inference is? Now, for those of you that are good at math, you should be able to relate to this, but if not, don't worry about it, okay? This is the basic quote unquote formula for making an inference. What you know, plus what the evidence proves will give you your inference. Now, I'm not overly fond of the word guess as it pertains to inferences, okay? Because when you really think about it, an inference is not a guess. It is a combination of a number of things that when you look at what the word guess implies, doesn't necessarily align, okay? What you know is background knowledge. There's no guesswork there. You know that or you don't. Does that make sense? So the terms that you guys are accustomed to is background knowledge or experience. But what you know, background knowledge, is all the same thing. The next thing is text evidence. Text evidence, or what the evidence proves, is whatever is said in the text that you are reading, okay? So when you add those two things together, you take what you know and add it to what you are told in the text, then you are able to make an inference about what the author is saying but not saying. You're able to read between the lines a little bit better. Everybody get that? Any questions? All right, so let's take a look at this example. For example, I infer that there is a ghost in my house based on the evidence that I have seen objects moving on their own. Now, that is fairly obvious when you look at it, okay? The inference comes from evidence. Again, there's no guess there. All right, I'm able to look at and draw the conclusion that there's a ghost in the house based on the fact that every time I walk in the room, an object gets up and moves on its own. This house is haunted. So what happens when you read, okay? A few things happen, right? Think about that voice that reads the words to you whenever you're reading a text, okay? You are typically making guesses and finding connections. You're asking questions and making predictions. And you're trying to personalize the reading. And you use background knowledge to help interpret what you are reading, okay? These are the things that occur, sometimes individually, sometimes collectively, one or two or three things at a time. But the relation when it comes to inferencing is that the only thing I would say is you're not necessarily making guesses. Well, you're making guesses as you go forward, as you gather evidence. In the absence of evidence, you're guessing. But as you gather evidence, it becomes less guessing, okay? Now that next to last bullet, all right, then actually the last two bullets, personalizes the reading and uses background knowledge. Most of the things that you guys are going to be assigned to read, you may or may not be interested in, okay? You heard me say multiple times, raise your hand if you got that survey from the state of Texas asking what you wanted to read about on the STAR exam. The state of Texas is not concerned with what you're interested in. They're concerned with how you interpret. So most times what you're reading on the STAR exam, you're not going to be overly interested in, okay? So that last bullet where it says uses background knowledge to interpret, that is a very important thing, because the larger your background knowledge, the bigger your frame of reference, the easier it is for you to deal with whatever it is that you're asked to read. Does that make sense? So hopefully as this year goes on, I will be able to help you expand the things that you know about. So that way, when you're sitting down at that test, the STAR exam later this year, you're not overly thrown off by something that they ask you to read. So just keep in mind, when you are reading, you need to make inferences about things happening in the story, okay? This is necessary. Because what you don't want to do is, I guess the word would be fall behind. You don't want to fall behind in the story, all right? You want to be continuously abreast of what's going on or what you think is going on, all right? Continuously making inferences. So let's take a look at this example. If I read that the main character hates old people, but then later becomes friends with an old person, I can infer that a theme of this story relates to challenging your prejudices, okay? Now, obviously, there's a whole bunch of other variables to that particular example, but on the surface, I think you understand what it's talking about, right? Now, when do we infer? All the time. From the first word to the last word. You are constantly trying to figure out what the author is really trying to say to you. But again, as you move forward and the text that you read become more complex, you're not going to be told anything directly. There's going to be very few things, especially of importance, that you are told directly. So you are in a constant state of inference from the first word all the way to the last word of the story. That part you don't necessarily need to focus too much on. Feeling empathy for characters, laughing at a joke, discovering an answer to a riddle, getting a sense about the story, the setting of the story, reacting to facts, and solving a mystery are all part of inferential thinking, okay? Now, you guys make inferences every day in every conversation you have, whether it's online or in person with family or friends, right? Now, this one is fairly simple. If the sky suddenly grow very cloudy and the wind begins to whip around your legs, what would you infer? It's about to be a storm, right? And here's that little process that you go through without actually knowing it, all right? You've seen the weather before. You have background knowledge about storms. Third one, you make connections between your background knowledge and the current weather to infer that it's about to get stormy, okay? So this right here, ladies and gentlemen, is the baseline definition of an inference, okay? If you don't take anything else from this presentation, take this. A conclusion reached on the basis of evidence and reasoning based from the text, okay? And that's why I said at the top, I'm not overly fond of the word guess, because when you really break it down, an inference is not a guess, because guess implies what? That you, well, not so much you don't know what you're talking about, but you don't have enough information to give a viable, credible answer, right? Guess what's in my pocket? If I said, guess what's in my pocket, and I just walked in the room without seeing anything other than me walking in the room, you have no basis to know what's in my pocket. I could have anything in my pocket. Logically, that's correct. So it's narrowed down to things that can fit in my pocket, right? But there are a great number of things that are sized up enough to fit in my pocket, which still leaves you a whole bunch of options. I don't look rich. Are you trying to hurt my feelings? You know I'm recording, right? So let me ask you a question. Do you know who Mark Zuckerberg is? Does he look rich? Why? Because you know he's rich or because he looks rich? Huh? But if you did not see his face before and you just saw him on the street, would you think he was rich? I'll show you guys later. Mark Zuckerberg does not look rich. You know who else doesn't look rich? Bill Gates. Oh, he looks like a cartoon rich man. Yes. All right. Facebook. It's creative Facebook. All right, let's do a couple of practice ones. We're actually almost done. All right. So based on this statement, what do you think the man's job is?
Oh, an astronaut.
An astronaut. Anybody disagree? Right? Fairly simple. Obviously, it doesn't mention that, but you can look at the word weightless, floating by the window to see the planet Earth below. It's an astronaut. Okay. All right. So take a second to read this paragraph. Just read it. Now that you've read it, are you serious right now? I'm recording, you know that, right? No, that's not how that works. Can we finish what we're doing first?
Oh, they want to go to date. They want to go on a date.
So go ahead and answer these two questions.
They're lovers. Yeah, they're lovers. They're significant others.
Probably married, right?
Oh, an anniversary.
An anniversary, right?
Yeah.
And there's more than enough evidence to support that, right?
Yeah.
Even though it's not mentioned directly.
Yeah.
Now, how about this one?
Where did you
No. Focus.
hair salon?
I would say hair salon.
Yo, hair salon. Like, because they said I heard a blow dryer in the distance. I was
Yeah. Towel around
I would concur.
I could do.
All right, last one.
As I entered, I thought this was a great way to eat. The school? Is it a school?
Oh, no, an ice cream shop. Yeah.
The chalkboard menu. Oh, yeah, the coffee shop.
Oh, yeah, ice cream.
Ice cream shop?
Oh, yeah, ice cream shop. Yeah,
I was thinking Baskin Robbins.
Yeah.
All right, so writers give clues, but readers, you guys, have to amass the evidence and draw conclusions for themselves. Again, that's why I don't like to use the word guess, okay? Because it's not about guessing. You use evidence and draw conclusions based on the evidence. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and stop right there. All right, we'll conduct a group practice of some sort. All right, for those of you that are online, there should already be something online for you to do in reference to this. 14.
So there's like 9 people that are not in school.
Right.
What's their name? Yeah, what's their name? Wait, before you answer that, I have a question. Okay, so